Soundstripe.
Hi, I'm SJ.
And I'm Pegsy.
Welcome to our Heels in the Hierarchy podcast, where we discuss the experiences and challenges faced by aspiring women in the workplace.
We'll share insights to help you gain new perspectives, practical strategies and reassurance. We'll also bring in occasional guests who share their stories and reveal that behind the polished exterior, even accomplished women face challenges just like yours.
We hope you'll laugh, learn and enjoy different perspectives around women in work and leadership. So step inside an episode of Heels in the Hierarchy, empowering women
without stepping on toes.
Welcome to this week's episode. So today we're going to be talking about menopause, particularly menopause in the workplace. So we're going to cover what menopause is, signs and symptoms, and looking at reasonable adjustments generally. So I used to be, and I still am, a menopause advocate in the workplace. I'm really passionate about it. And it's something that I think we've talked about before. And some of the guests that we've had have been at that similar age, and outside we kind of talk about just life cycles generally, isn't it? And it's something that we've kind of discussed about, wanting to talk about. So I'm glad that we're doing that today.
Me too.
So before we start, we've got a bit of an ask for all of our listeners. If you're enjoying the Heels in the Hierarchy, can you please download each episode, as this really supports our profile on the podcast sector. And we do want to reach as many people as we can. So can you please download it? And just for a trigger warning, really, because we know we're going to be talking about menopause, just be aware and look after yourself if it triggers anything. Right. So before we start, like what words do you associate when we think about menopause?
Age is the first word that comes to mind. Hot flushes. Forgetfulness, mood swings, and challenging relationships.
Oh, interesting. I've never really had that one before come up, so that's interesting.
Okay.
But that's my word again, interesting. I find everything interesting. But it is quite negative, those words.
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
That's a good question. I think we potentially, as females maybe, but we see menopause as the end of our childbearing years. Obviously, the first time we have a period, we're starting to blossom into womanhood. And then the menopause is the bit that ends that. So it seems to be more of an end of the ability to create new life, maybe, regardless of whether one chooses to have children or not. I think some of it is also maybe society's preconceptions about it, that it's quite age-related, and that a lot of things age-related are negative.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we talk about women in the workplace and some of the stigmatism, some what goes on and things, but this is a bit, you can't really escape it. You know, it's a cycle of how, like, we're going to go through it, whether we want to or not. And so it's quite sad, really, when, you know, we talk about it, all the words are really negative, whereas actually part of the work, when we look about menopause advocates and wanting to talk about it in the workplace and encouraging women to be open about it, you know, we talk about periods quite openly now, we talk about mental health a lot better, and it's definitely encouraging me to see people talk about the menopause, especially in women's groups as well. They kind of say, talk about symptoms, but it's still a connotation to negativity around its symptoms and, like you said, a life cycle, whereas actually what I'd love to see is women going, actually, the positivity of the richness of experience with age and how much, yes, it's something you're going through, but if you had a workplace that made that normal and worked with you to think about your symptoms, but also enabled you to see the wisdom that you hold, the experience that you hold because of that age, rather than seeing that I'm over the hill and I'm doing that. There's a huge shift then, isn't it, in terms of the words associated with menopause. Actually, it's part of hugely experienced women in the workplace who's been able to share experience and knowledge rather than just seeing them as symptom management and unable to function. So, yeah. So I'm wondering, are you up for a little bit of a quiz?
I am.
Okay.
I'm competitive.
Okay.
Just give me a heads up.
So something I like to do with people, mainly because it really kind of helps to understand the concept in which we're talking about. So overall, I'll give you a bit of facts and then I'll go into a bit of a quiz. And it'll be interesting to see what our listeners think in terms of their answers and what you're more than welcome to join in. But of course, it's only myself and Pegsy in the room today. So you're kind of on the hot spot. So overall, this is just kind of a general, did you know, rather than a quiz question, really. There's total working population is 33.3 million in the UK. A quarter of those people work in the public sector, and 2/3 of those are women in the NHS. And of those, 11% are menopausal age. That's 610,500. That's a lot of women.
We've started at 33 and a bit million.
Mm-hmm.
A quarter of those are in the public sector. 2/3 are women. 610,500. That is a huge number. An absolutely huge number of women of menopausal age, not necessarily going through the menopause all at the same time, but nonetheless, that's huge.
I mean, I'll talk about some of the reasons why it's important, and I'll talk about that a bit more and a bit more stats, but I think we just sometimes assume through the people that we know, and so we don't really see it as volume. So, both our parents who have gone through it, all our generations that we've known about it would have gone through it. But as growing up, you go, oh, right, you have some conversations about it. I don't know if you have conversations with your mum about it or teas and things like that, but I know that I've only spoken to my mum really about, or she's only been opened about it when probably in the last 5 years, when we're kind of rearing to that age, and suddenly it's gone. I thought my life was done, and I was like, oh, is that why our experience of them was different? And so they started speaking about it, but it is something that she definitely mentioned. It was never encouraged. You just had to go through it.
Yeah.
And so I do think it's a generational cultural thing that's shifted. But in terms of numbers, it's just never something that you would see as, oh yeah, pretty much any woman that we would know will go through it.
Yeah. I think you're right. We see it in a very small context with our immediate families. Broadly speaking, it was not discussed at work when I started in the workplace, and it's only in the last couple of years that it's become more conversational. My mum said, I think I've gone through the menopause. I'm not sure. That was in response to my mother-in-law. I remember in her kitchen swinging the door open at speed to try and get some fresh air into her kitchen, saying, Pegsy, has your mum had the menopause yet? And so I had to ask my mum, and that was her response. Even though we're talking about it more now, I think we are talking to mature women about menopause. And something that has just occurred to me is that from a relatively early age, we start talking to our daughters about the fact that our periods will come and how that will change their lives. Wouldn't it be great if when we're talking to them about the start of their journey with periods and the menstrual cycle, that we actually include the bit about the menopause and talk about it as being a phase in their life rather than the start of something, to the point that then when it begins to come to an end, it's seen in that negative sense. If we talk about it as a transitional phase, that having a menstrual cycle is both a beginning and an end experience, then when that generation starts to consider the menopause, it's not something that they might see as a failure. So back to your point about all of those negative words, it's not that they're no longer able to have babies. It's like, well, I've had my periods and I knew my periods would come to an end, and I'm now moving on to a menopausal phase and a post-menopausal life.
We were talking about that as like the language, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like using language that makes it not only safe to talk about and ask questions early on, but also they're already expecting it. So therefore it's not scary. And, back to that trigger warning, we're not talking about childbearing here, but it is a part of life that people in the cycles can have. And therefore, the end of that can also bring up other elements. And I've always thought that actually I'm a preempter. I always preempt the potential of things, not because I'm somebody who thinks negatively, but I also want to make sure that I'm overanalyzing, making sure I'm prepared for everything. And I've always done that with my children. So then they don't have any surprises in case it's never talked about. And I don't want the school system to be the people that only talk to them about certain things. We want that responsibility. So going a bit off track there, but it is absolutely an interesting point that actually there's an opportunity there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in the workplace, I know that they're doing menopause awareness days and they're talking around celebrating that element. And I think if we did it through those lenses, that would absolutely help around enabling women to feel more confident about talking to their employer, etc. So, okay, so we go back to the quiz really quickly.
Yeah.
So you'll be glad to know there's only about 8 questions, so it's not too much. And instead of me just going through what it is, etc., I thought, well, let's do a little quiz and then see how we go on. So question number 1, what do you think is the average age of menopause in the UK? So you're going to write these down, then we go to the end, I think.
Okay. Average age of women going through the menopause. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Number 2, how many people are affected by menopause symptoms at work? So out of 10.
How many people out of 10 within that number that I've just thought about? Okay. Yep.
Number 3, how many women experience menopause symptoms?
Okay.
This one's a little bit more descriptive. What do you think is perimenopause? So we're talking about menopause, but what do you think perimenopause is?
Okay.
And number 5, this is true and false.
Yeah.
Menopause only happens to women over the age of 45.
Okay.
Number 6, I hope everyone's kind of writing down or thinking about it as they're listening to this. What am I, number 6? Why might somebody go through an early menopause? So potentially 3 options. So I give you a point for each one that you do that might be correct. Considering that you've never seen these questions, but let's tell everybody that. Putting you on the hot seat.
I've got 2.
Okay.
Okay.
That's fine, yeah. What do you think are the 3 key hormones that play a part in the menopause transition? Again, there's up to 3 points at hand.
And
here.
you're not going to check my spelling?
Oh, I don't care about spelling. You just
Good.
You're going to tell me out loud. So as long as you can read your own writing, that's the main thing.
I've got 2 for them.
Okay.
3 hormones.
Yeah.
Okay. I've thought of a 3rd one. I'm not sure.
That's okay. And then the last question you'll be pleased to hear is name another 3 things. Okay. Name at least 3 lifestyle changes someone should consider that may support them going through the menopause.
Oh, so this is a positive thing.
Yeah.
3 lifestyle changes. I know the first 2. Okay. Ugh. None of them are fun.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's a bit like diet exercise. It's like, oh, I'm giving up the stuff, but then you get into Okay. So number 1 was the average age of menopause in the UK. Yeah. What did you write down?
50.
Oh, okay. That was pretty close. So according to research, the average age, and this is average, so this is what you're going to start, is 51. And that's because anyone between 40 and 65. And some people go for it earlier. So but this has been talking about average here. Okay. I'll give you a point for that, because that's pretty much.
I gave myself a point for that.
Did you? Okay. So, what did you put for down number 2, which was how many people are affected by menopause symptoms at work out of 10?
50%. So 5 out of 10.
Okay. It's higher than that, actually. It's 8 out of 10.
Okay.
So that's quite a high number, isn't it? 8 out of 10 women in the workplace have symptoms.
Yeah.
And number 3, how many women experience menopause symptoms?
I've just said most of them. That's 75%.
So 3 in 4 women.
Oh, that would be right if I said 75%.
I'll give you that.
Yay! Give me that one. Yay!
Yeah. And then what did you put for what is perimenopause?
I said early menopause, as in younger people having menopause.
Okay.
So outside of that age range.
Okay, that's kind of cheating. So you just kind of went early menopause. No, so perimenopause, I suppose I'll give you a point for that, but it's the time leading up to menopause. So I'll talk about exactly what the menopause is in a second.
Okay.
To make it clearer, but it's the time leading up to your menopause.
I'm going to be honest and say that's wrong then.
Okay.
Because what I meant was people having menopause at a younger age.
Okay, no, that's
wrong. Okay.
Well, I'll give you honesty. And you said you're competitive, so that's good. What did you put for 5? It's true or false that menopause only happens to women over the age of 45?
False.
Okay, cool. Why did you put false?
Because I know somebody who was recently put into a false menopause, which was to do with another topic we're going to speak about at some point in the future, which was endometriosis related.
So you're correct. It is absolutely false. Kind of leads to the next question about why might somebody go through an early menopause. What was your answers for that one? There's 3 potential options on that one.
I've said endometriosis and genetic, and then I couldn't think of a third one.
Okay. What you talked about somebody you know.
Yeah.
What was the reason for that?
So theirs was endometriosis related, and the view from the doctors was that if they put them in early menopause, took them out of menopause, effectively it would kind of be a reset of their gynecological settings.
So I'll give you that. It just says really when it talks about surgery.
Okay.
Medication, which would be part of that.
Okay.
And POI. So POI is premature ovarian insufficiency. So that's a condition where the women's ovaries stop working completely before the age of 40.
Okay.
So, like you talked about endo, obviously I talk about endo quite a lot, generally outside of the podcast because I suffer it, and medication induced me having a menopause when I was very young. So, or symptoms of it due to medication. So that's why it's so helpful for people to talk about symptoms or what's going on, because there's so many misconceptions that it's only for older women, but actually it's around really understanding there's lots of other reasons why people go through menopause, and we ourselves can't be ageist about that. Okay, so number 7 was, what are the 3 hormones that play in menopause transition?
So these are the only 3 hormones I know.
Yeah, go for it.
Estrogen, progesterone, and adrenaline.
Oh, I'll give you 2 out of 3.
Okay.
So it is estrogen, it is progesterone, and it's testosterone.
Do you know, I nearly put that, and then I put it out of my head because I associate that with men.
Yeah. So obviously our levels go up and down and we lose a lot of that.
Yeah.
And that's why it kind of triggers that in terms of our symptoms. And then name at least 3 lifestyle changes someone should consider to help them through the menopause.
So enthusiastically, not. I've written diet, exercise, and alcohol consumption because, you're going through the menopause. Why don't you just give up everything like food and
stuff you enjoy? I think that should be the 3 for generally any answer.
Anything.
Everybody who goes to the doctors is, actually the 3rd one was actually, so exercise, yes, diet, yes. And then it was obviously reduced alcohol, if you put that, or quit smoking.
Yeah.
And then the other key ones is up to 3 is calcium, vitamin D, and supplements. So if anyone's put those kind of things, that also helps. So you will see now, Boots particularly, is that they have a whole range of supplements and hormone support for women who are going through menopausal symptoms. And so they do a lot of work with various charities and agencies around supplements and healthiness. But yes, so I'll give you them. So that's fine.
So because I'm competitive,
what did you get?
And if you give 1 point for each answer, it's a total of 14 possible answers. I got 10 out of 14.
Okay.
So I'm okay with that.
Considering we've never talked about it
I'm proud.
And never did the quiz before, then I think that's pretty awesome. I think you did pretty well. So I'll be interested to see what everybody else has put down if they're competitive and want to kind of let us know. That would be great. So really briefly, when we talk about menopause, before I kind of go into why it's important for the workplace. What I find really interesting is maybe explaining a little bit more about what it actually is, because in all honesty, I'd heard the words perimenopause, menopause, but wasn't quite sure when it actually happened. I thought it was like a cycle, like, you know, women have 28-day cycles or 30-day cycles. It's a long dreaded thing. So to help kind of put it in context, so the menopause is, they have symptoms like difficult sleeping, insomnia, fatigue, hot flushes, and that could be during the day, it could be during the night, low mood. It's all wonderful word things, isn't it? Depression, your nervousness, anxiety. So these things are so important to be aware of. We know we've talked before is encouraging women really generally to start keeping track of symptoms. So if you know your period and you know your cycles, you know, we always encourage women to keep a track on it. So then we know if it's something's going wrong. So like if you're having really bad pain, it's horrendous bleeding, and then suddenly it stops, that's a change that we need to think about. So one of the encouragement is to do that. But also, I think we've talked about it before, you know, these are all symptoms of it. So you think about reduced ability to concentrate. So I think we call it brain fog, really, don't we? Focus problems, memory recall, migraines, headache, aches, pains, irregular, heavy bleeding. So it's not the bleeding stops. You still get heavy bleeding. So it's like part of it, the joys. Urinary issues, yay. Increased frequency. So it's menopause is defined as biological stage in life that occurs when hormones change and eventually menstruation stops. So it's usually defined as having occurred when you've not had a period for 12 consecutive months. For those reaching menopause will naturally. So these aren't people that have had an operation or been triggered by medication. And so that's why menopause average age is 51. So the difference between that is that perimenopause is the time leading up to menopause when you may experience changes of symptoms. So you're still having your period, but it's either irregular and you're having a bit more mood swings, you know, can have some symptoms, but this is years before the menopause. So the menopause is literally the day that your period stops.
Okay.
So you have 12 consecutive. It's crazy, isn't it, to think about it? Like, this is why it's so important, I think, for us to track generally our cycles, because actually then it helps people to go, is something changing? And then in post-menopause, which is something that is the time after the menopause has occurred, and then you start when you've not had a period for 12 months and the rest of your life.
Okay.
So when we talk about menopause in this guide, I'm kind of referring to any of those stages. So you can talk about, we talk about perimenopause, you talk about post-menopause, and then menopause moment itself. And there's so many things, I think, when it comes to symptoms of it, which we've talked about, that are actually both physical, but also psychological.
So I am fascinated by that. When I was about 40, I'm guessing, I had something called the Mirena coil inserted.
Okay.
I don't know if it's still available these days, but it's inserted, and I think it gets replaced about every 7 or 10 years. What it does is it actually stops the periods completely. So I physically stopped having a period, let's say aged 40. So I would not have been able to have tracked my periods. I guess there could be an app available now, but I didn't at the time. But also listening to some of the symptoms that you were sharing of the sort of menopausal phase of our lives, I think it's pretty easy to not associate those with the menopause because they're associated with so many other things.
Yeah.
So when I went through my menopause, when I assume that I was experiencing key menopause symptoms, I was in quite a difficult job, working in an organization that had a very demanding and somewhat toxic environment for a line manager who replicated those cultural behaviors in terms of that being high demand and high expectations. I found that I lost confidence, that I, under stress, felt that I became very forgetful, that I would be quite tearful and emotional. One of the reasons I said about it impacting sort of relationships was because I was stressed and emotional and teary. And all of those behavioural and physical symptoms were actually identified in a negative way by my line manager. So I then perceived that I was failing in my capacity as a manager of a team. And at no point did I think that I was going through the menopause. It's not necessarily that it wasn't because I wasn't having the periods, but if I'd have been having periods, would I still have associated it with the menopause at that time as well? I don't know.
But it's so difficult, isn't it? Because like you say, if you didn't have people to come alongside you and discuss, do you think this may be happening for you? Or I've noticed, one of the things we talk about a lot around management and responsibility as advocates is very much around having honest conversations, to invite those conversations. It's very scary, like you say, if you're a high intense job and you've got that stress, that is a natural symptom. Some of the symptoms of stress is very much fatigue, brain fog, emotional, because you haven't got the energy to function. And so it absolutely is difficult, but it's also sounds like, that could have been a really lonely place to be, because it becomes an inward looking thing. So you described obviously thinking that you were failing, you weren't doing it well, it was impacting your relationships, but you also didn't have somebody to have your corner and just check in. It was automatically, this is wrong with you, rather than, I'm really curious what's going on here. And that sounds a really negative impact, I think.
Also, my line manager was female and a bit younger than me. And one of the, on reflection, absolutely disgraceful things that she did to me once when we were out at a conference was she said to me, I've been discussing your work and your approach to work with my aunts, and they think you might be going through the menopause. And then we went into the rest of the conference. Now, obviously, that went through my head a lot. I thought it was really, the timing was wrong, the delivery was wrong. There was no mention of it afterwards. And I was so outraged because of it, the age connotations with menopause, and at the time with that working environment, that the bit that I held on to was, I've been discussing you with my aged aunts because you're an old person. So I held on to that. Your poor performance, which was a subtext there, and you're just very old. So I lost the possibility that this could be menopause related and the potential to lift a weight that was being added over time. And my female manager, younger than me, never brought me back to a sympathetic discussion about menopause so that I could then recalibrate.
It was today, you like put them over hot coals in the HR.
Absolutely.
Taking that something external to family members of all places. And it's disgraceful behaviour. And I can't imagine it's in hindsight now, but the damage that could have caused, to the fact that I'm just so sorry that happened, and again, we talk about, we want to be each other's advocates. The fact that another female, it's bad enough that we have to, force ourselves to kind of fight against other sexisms in male managers when they can't understand that. But interestingly on that, actually, there's been a lot of work around men supporting due to the fact that they have wives, they have, they've got daughters, and very much in the workplace going, you've got no excuse to bury your head in the sand. You need to know this. And actually it's been quite interesting that people have kind of come and said, this could be, how do I support my partner? Things like that. So it does impact other people. But I'm so sorry that, and it angers me it angers me loads, the fact that there's still people out there that has this kind of attitude.
Yeah.
And actually the worst thing is you spend a lot of your life in the workplace.
Yes.
That's the one place you thrive, or, people leave. And I think one of the stats I'll say later is very much about people considering to leave work because of the symptoms rather than the support that they get and that negative connotations. And like I say, when it comes to symptoms, it's not just the physical stuff, it's a psychological battle, because you've got anxiety, you've got insomnia. I mean, that has huge impact on how you perform or work. And you don't have the resilience to be able to take that. So when someone's so proudly saying a comment, so brashly, out of context to someone they're supposed to be managing, that's horrendous. And I just hope that doesn't work. And please take advice, people, to be more aware of words do impact.
Yeah. I think 2 takeaways from there, one negative, one positive, is that sadly there will still be women in the workplace 10 years on from that conversation who are having the same challenges, the same experiences, whether that's from a male colleague or a female colleague. But the positive is the number of men who are not only positively engaging in and curious about the menopause, but are growing in confidence in speaking to women about the menopause. And that can only be for the good. So I hope the negative one continues to decline and the positive one continues to increase, because I think that's so important.
I think that's why we're talking about it, isn't it? That when we're talking about leadership, we're talking about management, we're talking about, women in the workplace. And this is a life cycle that is going to impact you. So regardless of what age you are right now, or whoever's listening, we all know somebody that is going to go through it, or is currently going through it, or isn't being discussed, or actually is really isolated and lonely because they're the fear of or needing to portray something. Why are we talking about it? There's huge, we talk about 4 really major issues in the workplace, but there's a demographic. I can never really say that properly. There's the business case, there's a social responsibility, and then there's a legal case. So we've talked about, I shared some stats earlier, but demographically, menopausal women are the fastest growing workforce demographic in the UK. So that's huge. And then over 4.6 million over the age of 50 are still in work in the UK. And then according to the Faculty of Occupational Medicine, nearly 8 out of 10 menopausal women are in work. So that's a lot of people. I know we talked about the numbers earlier. Imagine that people have started leaving work. So one of the stats I read was that, shockingly, researchers, 1 in 4 are considering leaving work because of menopause. So if we lost just a quarter, which is a huge amount, but a quarter of our female workforce between 40 to 60, that's wiping out a huge amount of women in business. So how would that look in, for example, healthcare, schools, particularly education sectors, any public sectors? We wouldn't have a functioning system.
So it's the institutional knowledge, it's the mentoring and coaching, it's the general work experience, and it's a substantial cost on rehiring and training if those women were to leave. That's huge.
And I think that's the issue, isn't it? Is that if, for example, 6 in 10 are saying that their symptoms had a negative impact on their work and then potentially considering leaving work, 40 to 60. So you think now that the retirement age is 78 potentially coming up? Or is it 68, not 78?
68.
It feels like it's going to be 78 by the time I get
in no time at all.
But that's like you've had a quarter of your life and then you've kind of given up. Because life really starts at that age. When you're thinking about careers, when you're thinking about, your knowledge really gets out of there, and people usually leave university or education, you're only just really learning. It's in the workplace that you develop, isn't it? And to get those skills. And in leadership as well, in terms of managing other people, it comes through years of experience. And so you can't just come out and just imagine just not having it feels like you're going back in the dark ages. In terms of the richness of experience, like you say, and the mentors and the coaching. So even a business case. So one of the other elements is a business case. The estimate cost of replacing an employee is around £30,000. And so if that people who are considering leaving, the 1 in 6, actually leave, that's a huge amount of money that each employee in those sectors we talked about would have to look at rehiring. And if people in that age aren't wanting to stay in work, then you're going to go for inexperienced and unknowledgeable, and potentially people that don't have that knowledge impacting the workforce. So that's a really negative thing.
But also that's not static. If we sort of said we've got that number of people who are thinking of leaving and then who do and then need to be replaced, in another month or two, there will be more women starting perimenopause and menopause. A percentage of them might think about leaving, so they need to be replaced. And then a month or two afterwards, there's another group of women who are thinking about
it doesn't
moving
change.
on. It's a constant thing, isn't it?
We are all aging.
Yeah.
We all are born and we all die. So, we've got, the time does not stop, does it? But again, I think you've talked about it before, but business reducing absenteeism. I can never say that.
Absenteeism.
Yeah, absenteeism. So if you've got people who are dragging themselves into work, who are exhausted because they've got insomnia, or fatigued, but still have an early start, and don't have anything or don't even talk about a reasonable adjustments, not able to perform, then actually not taking sick days, but then not doing, you're still costing that to the business case, and it all not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. So then you suddenly go off on sick because you don't want to talk about, and then they got costs of sick as well. And so from a business case, being able to support your staff, generally, it's in your favour to be able to keep your staff.
The other thing is that if women feel stigmatised for taking time off sick because of the menopause, when they have to take time off sick, they are likely to cite a different reason for the cause of that sickness, which then means that the statistics that we've got on who are sick and the symptoms, statistics around why they're sick are wrong. And so even things like our employee assistance programs, they're skewed because they're based on inaccurate data. It's got such a different impact. We're going to put it down to back problems, or we're going to put it down to flu. If we could genuinely capture the figures, then organisations who want to make a positive impact to their employees through their employee assistance programs, through other support mechanisms, would be able to do that because they know the percentage of people who are genuinely impacted.
But I think also, how sometimes you have so many times off, it triggers an occupational health assessment. So at the same time, if we could encourage people to be more honest in knowing that, and people there's certain categories that people are protected. So we talk about the occupational health, but they're protected under certain acts. And that's the same case, because actually occupational health would then go, right, let's look at reasonable adjustments rather than, you've been off for so-and-so. But you're totally right. But going even to the social responsibility, it just feels the right thing to do when we talk about it. We should, whether it's a business, whether you're kind of big business, small corporate healthcare, we should want to support our colleagues. We should want to be able to keep experience and knowledge, because that's so difficult to learn. You can have somebody who has that, but they don't have the skills, don't have the experience. So we're losing so much experience out of insufficient support, and that doesn't sit right. And when we're talking about healthcare, we're talking about education. I mean, these are things that we're supposed to be what we're standing up for. So even from a social perspective, we have a responsibility, and we should want people to thrive and want to be able to recommend that employer for being able to do that. So I suppose my constant thing is, if you're a leader in management, is to advocate. It doesn't matter if you're not going through it, but you would never want anyone to feel like you felt from when somebody said that to you and completely pull the rug from out of you, and you go, what on earth are you talking about?
Because there's then an association in the current context of an association with the symptoms, not as the menopause being part of an individual's life cycle, life journey. And I think it would just be so nice to separate the symptom from the employee. Because I think that's in that spot is where the stigma happens, isn't it?
But I think that's the key, isn't it? The whole point of having awareness is that it's not the individual that's the concern.
Yeah.
It's actually a period of time.
Exactly.
And so that time will go. So if they're supported and working with it and they're protected, then actually they're only just thriving to be back more into the business.
100%. Yeah.
And so there is the effect of menopause paper that came out. It's all about the economic participation in the UK, and you can Google it, it'll come up. But there is a legal case that businesses have a legal responsibility. So I think that's more in the recent 5 years, really. I think more research and more evidence has come out, but there is a legal case to provide support. And then that means that we have to, as leaders and managers, that they need to be aware of the legal framework. So menopause is part of that.
Yeah.
And so that actually we have a protection similar to if you go on pregnancy leave, you're protected because it's a period of time.
Yes.
And so similar, it's a period of a cycle that you will transition and you are still able to work.
Yeah.
And actually it's around supporting people to think about reasonable adjustments and what does that look like, and having confidence to talk about, look, you can't penalise me because of what my symptoms are. Similarly, you're protected now, which you never used to be, because there's a framework to protect you. So yes, your employer might not be menopause friendly employer, but you can be. There's so much information, which is encouraging, and it's going in the right direction. And nobody should be penalised because of something that is a life cycle. Right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that everyone's having the same experience. And so part of why they're doing advocates and people talking about it is particularly in workplaces. In October, there's the World Menopause Day. Same as there's World Mental Health Day. That's an amazing opportunity to share and celebrate people's experience. But it shouldn't be a day. It should be part of every day.
Yeah.
And I still think we've got a long way to go when it comes to that.
I agree. We will move the dial without question when we have specific days to highlight, a variety of things such as menopause. However, there's always those organisations that feel that it's a tick box exercise. I've put a couple of posters around. I've, sent an email saying we support the women who are going through the menopause at the moment. Tick. And then they can forget about it for 364 days. Yeah.
And I think this is when we're talking about particularly how to support somebody. So one of the things that we find in discussions is everyone has different symptoms. You don't have not everyone has the typical line of yes, oh, that must be that, right? So you can have one or two, you could have everything, and it's difficult. But it's around supporting people, whatever age they are in a workplace, to be aware and support and make it available to have discussions in the workplace. So then you can support somebody. So if somebody isn't performing, it doesn't matter if you're a leader or their manager, is being confident enough to have an awareness that this is what happens. And so actually, if you're noticing somebody struggling at work, if you're noticing someone who's coming in late a lot, if same as anything, be a human and have compassion and just invite a conversation. If they shut it down, they shut it down. But it might be an opening door as a colleague to just notice some of the symptoms and just reflect that. So I'm just checking in to see if you're okay, because I'm just as a friend or a colleague, just want to check in.
Yeah.
And obviously, you don't want to be pointing out everything, but sometimes it's helpful for somebody else to start the conversation.
Yeah.
Or having someone to advocate to say, if you've got people that are close around, is there guidance? Knowing where the guidance are in, your policies and procedures. Where's the guidance that you can kind of signpost people to, or help people to know these are the people to talk to if you're experiencing anything, because everyone's responsibility, right? Everyone's responsibility. Everyone's got mental health. It's all our responsibility to be aware of it. Same concept. And I think the more we normalize this language, the more confident I think people will feel, rather than going, "Ooh, you're kind of scared to talk about it because it might trigger somebody." All we're asking people is just to be open and make it less of a stigma or a taboo.
Yeah.
That makes sense. The only other thing I would kind of say is that there is actually some good tools out there, and some of the things is about keeping diaries and things like that. And there's a workbook that we used to work with, but it's basically you can write it, anyone can kind of use it. And it's a 3-stage process. So one of it is about tracking symptoms. So whatever age you are, you're tracking your symptoms. But if you're suddenly noticing that, I had a period for a while, I am not sleeping the same way. And yeah, absolutely, it could be work, it could be stress. I mean, we're not telling that everything that you're changing means the menopause, right? But it means if you don't track your symptoms, you don't know what's different in your normal lifestyle. But actually, if it's no other events, just track over a year, 6 months, 3 months even, noticing, and ask people that you trust around, have you noticed anything, about what's going on for yourself? And that's always really helpful, because it's a bit like when you're writing things down, it's about noticing. It's not about changing, it's just noticing something.
But we know that journaling is incredibly good for our well-being. And so if we are already in good habits about journaling, we're going to notice those changes, even if we don't necessarily think that we're transitioning into perimenopause. Inevitably, we will start to respond to some of those changes, because in that journaling, we will be recording the fact that, I wonder if that's because I didn't sleep well last night. And we'll start to pick up on those arguably much earlier than we might have done.
And I think part of that is noticing your own philosophy, because everyone's got a different philosophy on what they believe about menopause. So culturally, people may have different perspectives. So obviously we're coming from a kind of holistic, supportive kind of model when we're trying to make the workplace more accessible. But culturally, people have potentially different philosophies on what they do in their culture around menopause, how they would work. There's still various perspectives. So understanding your own philosophy is really important. So what's important to you? So when it comes to work, it's around, you can't manage your menopause journey if you don't know how you feel about it.
Yes. One of the really key points that you mentioned there is this sort of cultural differences. If we're going to be open-minded about menopause as women and as women leaders, inevitably we look at that through the lens of our own cultural beliefs and practices. And it's the conscious decision to walk in somebody else's shoes by learning how each different culture perhaps views menopause. So it's quite easy for me as a white woman to believe that I have a good grasp of menopause. But what I don't do is have a good grasp of menopause from a range of different cultural backgrounds unless I am consciously doing some research on those different cultures and how they are currently addressing periods in general and menopause in particular, and adapt my interactions with the women of colour that I work with an understanding of that, rather than me transferring my white perspective to them.
Exactly. I think that's the thing, isn't it? Is none of us are experts. None of us are, this is how you should do it. What we're exploring is be open to the fact that you need to understand yourself and your own culture and your environment, and therefore how that may impact you in the workplace. Everything, as a line manager, is an invitation Because if your performance at work is being impacted, it's going to come up in conversation. But what we want to do is encourage courageous conversations where it's not around stigmatism or pointing out fault. It's an opportunity to invite a conversation of, I'm just curious if there's anything else happening and there's anything we can support you with in terms of, I'm noticing that obviously it's difficult for you to focus, or I'm noticing that, and just opening that conversation. Because in some, it will absolutely be taboo and absolutely will not want to talk about it. And that's still a choice.
And for some women, they may well be coping well with their menopause, but in an environment where they're not supported in their culture. So, as you say, being supportive of them, being curious and opening up conversations can be an absolute lifeline, just to be able to share experiences, to be able to voice some of the challenges that they have perhaps in a domestic setting, even if they're coping well with the physical and mental symptoms of a menopause. Just culturally, there might be some challenges. They just want to be able to open up and have a good conversation.
But I think that's where HR can sometimes advise. And what's quite nice, actually, when you were talking, reminded me of the opportunities we have. So if people are fearful about, I don't know how to have a conversation, how am I going to bring this up? You know, things like the World Menopause Day makes a great opportunity for businesses because it enables them to say, well, today we're celebrating menopausal women and the symptoms and the wisdom that they've got. And, you know, also that we've got a new policy on it. Please go and have a look at it. You know, inviting people to kind of be able to read the facts and what you're doing as a workplace. It encourages people to want to go, I didn't realize this is what we were doing and this is how they're encouraging. So it's opportunities to have conversations indirectly.
Yes.
With the ability to be more factual. So some people see things quite static, and what's the facts and how would that benefit me? And having things that are backed up in terms of the legal frameworks, people knowing where they stand, understanding that, you know, there's reasonable adjustments available. And these are opportunities to, you know, we've got a new policy on reasonable adjustments. This is what it covers. And it covers a range of things. But also it's understanding, if you don't know what your symptoms are and you don't know how it impacts you, then how are you going to be able to have a conversation to say, I think I may be going through it, and therefore my reasonable adjustment is if I'm not able to sleep at night and I'm going to sleep at 6 a.m, I'm never going to make it for 8 or 9 a.m. So actually, is there a possibility in my role when those are really bad triggers to be able to either work from home or do later hours? Is still working. It's about reasonable adjustments. It's not changing everything. It's not taking your role away. It's not about you're not able to do your job. But as an employee, you want to get the best out of your employees, right? So having a conversation of knowing what your symptoms are, how it's going, means that it's easy and it's fluid. Like I say, it's not everything's going to be like that forever. And also, it helps somebody to have the confidence to go, I still want to go for a promotion. You should still be able to go for leadership roles.
Absolutely.
And they can't legally penalise you. Same as the intent, they can't penalise you for going through it. And you've got that protection. So having a framework where you know there's reasonable adjustments, I'd encourage people to look in your workplace. There's always going to be elements of policy and procedures around reasonable adjustments now. That's kind of a legal thing. You know, what understanding what that looks like. And actually some of the prompts you get it from Google now, but a lot of prompts of how do I want to talk about it? Especially if it's a male or you're feeling comfortable, or even a female that I could be younger being managed, or an older one who's a generation that potentially their belief system is, we don't talk about it, we just get on with it. But that shouldn't stop you, because you've got that backing now of going, actually, this is what I'm experiencing, this is my journey, and this is what I need. And, you know, of occupational health now, and, so it kind of gives us more of the ability to, it's not your manager's decision anymore. They can't be biased. We have to be in an environment where we have to see it through different lens, even if our cultural beliefs are different. If you're supporting the employees, you're working to the employer's value system and their work ethic. If they've got systems in place, that is what you should be working to. So it does give people more confidence, I think, and ability to look at it. It doesn't make it easy. So I think that's kind of my encouragement, really. So I'll give them examples of things that I've experienced around reasonable adjustments, probably, because people think, oh, what is reasonable adjustments?
Yeah.
So if you had somebody with hot flushes, for example, it's not saying, I can never come in the office. Reasonable adjustments could be, do I need a fan near me? Simple as that.
Yeah.
You know, in a hot day, most people have fans. So it's not like, oh, you've got a fan, you're going for menopause. It's going to actually, is the lighting going to be difficult for me in this office?
Yeah.
So actually, do I need to be a different element, or can I be blind? That's reasonable. So reasonable is not about changing all your hours and being drastic. It's actually what elements as a business can we support you with? So things like that. If you're having, like I said, talk about sleeping, reviewing just the start times, maybe all of your end times, change things like that. It has to be reasonable in terms of there has to be, or potential flexible working arrangements. So it's not always going to be all the time. You just maybe may one day a month or 2 days a month with struggling. So having a bit more flexibility. And we know, regardless of if it's menopause or not, flexibility really keeps people with your company.
Yeah.
So if it's talking about perimenopause and you've got horrendous heavy bleeding, so it's going to impact your iron and fainting, things like being able to bring some change of clothes and having somewhere to change without questions being asked is important. Being able to go, actually, I've got an appointment, and being able to do that. Or even just accessibility to sanitary products, because you need to do that. They're practical things. Actually, and as an employer, they will see that as a win, because you're not going to lose your hours. You're not changing anything. You're just needing additional support, which should be in place anyway.
Yeah.
You know? But that's what reasonable adjustments are. And if in terms of the psychological, so thinking anxiety, we're thinking panic attacks, because it does impact a person's perspective on themselves at some point. Because this, like I say, this is years. It's not just, oh, we have a symptom one day and then it changes.
Yeah.
It's a gradual change, and that can be quite scary. And often people don't really realise, oh my goodness, I thought I was having a mental break, but actually it was to do with the symptoms of menopause. And so if you're having any like that, just go and seek support from your GP, or go and get advice, medical advice. That's why it's so important to track, because otherwise it can be confusing for people to be able to diagnose. But it's about what you need. You may just need some more regular one-to-one check-ins. It may be, like you say, a referral to EAP, which is Employment Assistance Program. It may be that you can get counselling, and all that are legal protections within the workplace. So that would be going back to supporting you to have a conversation, but also your philosophy of what do you need? What is your approach? Make it practical. Sometimes the employer is really important, because then they feel that they're able to give you something, and be able to know what your rights are in terms of what's going on. But going back to it, if we all did this right, in reality, going back to that attitude around menopause, is that we want people to feel that they're experienced. That actually an employer, we have wise people because of age in a celebratory way. We don't want to see age as a decline. We want to see it as a, how knowledgeable are people? And actually they're fabulous and capable, and are able to push the business forward, if anything, in terms of mentoring and supporting the next generation. And if we're losing them, then we're going to get a mediocre business, and that's not what people want, and you're going to lose the money. So we want to change that narrative between symptom calling around what do you think associate menopause, hot flushes, moods, that kind of thing, with symptoms, to back to the individual of going, strip the symptoms and see the individual.
Yeah.
Menopause just represents a life cycle, but the people that are experiencing it are extremely experienced, and you can't lose them. So it's so important to think differently about that.
Yeah, I agree. You frequently use the word curious. The more that we include curiosity in our management style, and particularly around the menopause, we're going to be educated as well. But curiosity moves things forward. Curiosity increases understanding. Curiosity increases engagement. And creates a trust-based working environment. Curiosity is almost never confrontational, because if it results in a confrontation, then it's the way that message is being delivered, which isn't being delivered curiously.
Yeah.
It's only for the good.
Yeah, totally. And I hope that for our listeners, it's kind of really helped to think things differently and just reflect a little bit about the culture that everyone's working in, the opportunities for conversation, and ways that we can continue to celebrate our staff and the experience. And if people aren't part of, and their workplace isn't a menopause friendly employer, then actually that's a great opportunity to discuss that, because businesses love like awards and plaques to say we are this, because it actually attracts people into work. And there's so many around, people celebrating and going through businesses of the year and because of X, Y, and Z, and they've been able to keep that. So my encouragement is have discussions with people around you, see what's available, know your policies and procedures, and try and shift that needle a little bit around keeping and celebrating those women around you.
And with my HR hat on, I would argue that businesses need to see the menopause as offering a really good return on investment, given the number of people, the number of women who are affected by the menopause, that they make up a large proportion of the working society, and how many of them are thinking of moving on. Then reasonable adjustments, not permanent changes, but reasonable adjustments, providing additional sanitary products, creating a good working environment where people want to stay, and encouraging curiosity among everyone, openness of conversations included. That is going to earn substantial financial dividends, even in a non-profit making organisation, because it's not simply about a cost to the bottom line. It's a cost benefit of creating a good organisational culture that sees menopause as being a key part of the holistic perspective of women in the workplace.
Totally. I've really enjoyed this conversation, actually. I know we've been planning to kind of talk about it for a while, but we've done it.
We have.
We've talked about it. We've talked about a lot. I thank you for sharing your story. I hope it really resonated in some of the issues that have been so wrong with our system. But there is a light in the tunnel in terms of a lot of work around advocacy and celebration. And I just hope that that is where we're going rather than backwards, really. And please share, we love to engage with you. So if there's anything that people want to share and celebrate, actually, we'd love to hear that. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Brilliant. Another good job.
Soundstripe.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed, please download the podcast on any of your platforms that you listen on. Share, like, and follow so others can enjoy. Until next time, keep your heels high and your standards higher.